Welcome to the Dance Centre podcast. I am your host, Claire French, and I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, Canada. I'll be talking to dancers, choreographers and other members of the dance world here on the West Coast to find out more about their creative work and practices and to discuss what it means to us to be dance professionals today. Thanks for joining us. So for this podcast, let's think of it more as being co-hosted. I'm talking with several choreographers, Jeanette Kotowich, Simran Sachar, Virginia Duivenvoorden, Vanessa Goodman, and myself. We are Regroup, and Regroup was something I initiated and conceived of as an extension of some of my academic research out of my PhD, but also as part of my residency at the Dance Centre over the past year. And so we decided that it might be fun for the podcast to be, one, acknowledging that I've been a programmed artist for the year, and two, to share the work that we've been doing in the same fashion that we've been doing the work of Regroup, which is as co-facilitators, co-creators when we create, but just kind of cohabiting really as choreographers together. So I invited these particular choreographers and dance makers into the Regroup idea because I really did, as far as I know them, feel that they were as willing and enthusiastic as me to engage with composition and to share and articulate how they develop their choreographic practices, but also to be interested in communicating and exchanging outside of producing choreography and outside of our roles as choreographers or dance makers. I'm delighted to be joined by them. It's become over the year much more than I had anticipated it could be, but it has stayed true to its form in that it's remained adaptive and emergent. We define and redefine the sense of group when we meet. I am truly grateful for this time with them, and this also celebrates our first anniversary. Here we go, Regroup podcast. We're all here. I thought the very first thing we could do is just go through, like, under a minute, say who you are and just like a sentence about kind of you as an artist, if you like, right now, almost like what you would say in your bio, but just to put one sentence to your name would be really lovely. So, you know, in this context, I'm here as a choreographer, dance artist, teacher, facilitator, joining in with you in Regroup, which is something that I initiated as an extension of some of my research, but of course it's become way more than that. I am still a practicing artist and developing a kind of new way to work for myself right now, which is very exciting. I'll end that there, and then I will just pass on to Jeanette.
Okay, my name's Jeanette. I'm originally from Treaty 4 territory, and I now reside on Squamish, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh territory. And yeah, I'm a dance artist, a creator, choreographer, director, and I work within the Nehiao and Métis cosmology and contemporary dance practices. I have a bit of a summer cold, so I apologize for like how my voice sounds.
Thanks, Jeanette. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Virginia?
Hello, my name's Virginia. I'm an artist and an educator. I'm also an actor and director, more newly into directing. And I've been working on a couple of sweet projects, Echo Chamber, my piece that I'm working on, as well as just loving being a part of this group, Regroup, because I'm super fascinated / obsessed with entering into the unknown and finding all the treasures there within. And I really appreciate all of you for your courage in entering that space together.
Thanks, Virginia. Vanessa's next, who I did actually interview on the podcast very recently, and Vanessa did point out to me that she's had a lot of airtime, but I just want to say right here and now that I want you to take some airtime today.
Hi, thanks for having all of us here today, Claire. It's really nice to gather in different spaces together, and this is the first time we've gathered in this type of space together, so I'm looking forward to seeing what emerges as we land here today together. I'm originally from Takaranto, and I now currently reside here on the West Coast, on the unceded Coast Salish territory, and I am a dance maker / I like to make sound when I make dances / I like to work within the spaces of terms of liminality and perspective and intimacy with our surroundings. I think my primary interests are how we can create senses of intimacy and kind of community environments or communal environments together to understand what it means to be together in this current time.
Thank you. Simran.
Hi, I'm Simran. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited also to gather here on a technological space and we're not in person, so that's really nice. I am a choreographer, a dance artist, actor, writer, and teacher. I work within the context of street dance and contemporary dance. My work spans across stage, film and TV, and as well as XR technology. I'm really interested right now in distorted memories and how memory distortion can affect our body or affects the way we retell stories or the way we remember things. I'm also really interested in baggage and how baggage is necessary to lead us to joy, as well as the dream world and alternate realities and ways we can find ourselves in alternate realities.
Wonderful. So already I feel like there should be an understanding of the context here that how do we meet? How do we bring all of these different ways? We have movement, obviously, at the heart of what we all do, and that is one of the things that we bring to the table. But I think the very exciting thing for all of us is that by just arriving in a space together, things start to bubble, questions start to come up, and we obviously bring, as Simran just mentioned, baggage with us, and also ways of approaching maybe somebody else's baggage without having the full context of that baggage. Sometimes there's I think we could all provide different perspectives, perhaps different ways of kind of engaging with those things. One of the things I'd like to maybe open up with is so many ways we could go, but one of the things I was thinking was we've already talked about community or how we create it maybe, or how we situate ourselves inside of it. And then we are a network, we're kind of like a specific network, but we're also kind of a vague network in terms of our purpose, which I think is a really beautiful thing. And I just wonder if anybody wants to just pick up on this idea of either being part of a network or maybe even feeling like we have to kind of glide in and out of networks, so we find streams of them. I feel like that might be an interesting area, especially for each of us to kind of talk about what kind of networks we're currently in, because I think we're all in slightly different ones. That's one thing that I thought might be a bit insightful that we continue to share in talking about practice from all of the angles we're in, but that we bring it into a kind of sense of networking or community. Does that make any sense to you? I just feel like we've all got different connections and attachments to community right now, and I think that could be a really beautiful thing to expand upon. Yeah.
I think, in terms of how I work and how I've been lucky enough and privileged to work within the context of being on the West Coast here, it has always been in relations with people, individuals, and organizations. I feel like that's a huge part of what I do and how I can operate here. I feel like there's so many different facets, and I also believe that being on the periphery of things is also very interesting in terms of community. That, how do I explain this? I think my whole career path has been about building relationships with individual people that turn into these long-term collaborative exchanges, and that works within the context of organizational relationships down to individual, down to collective, and I'm talking across artistic, administrative, and also in the mess of the functional of what we do. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I want to say about that.
Beautiful. Jeanette, would you like to pick up on
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's been so beautiful about like our regroup gatherings is that like we don't really have an agenda when we come together
Mm.
and we just allow like, the present moment to be there and whatever it is that we need to share in the moment or whatever it is that we're processing, we're kind of there for like peer-to-peer support. And it's like we have talked about this before as a group that it's quite uncommon to be invited into a space without an agenda. So yeah, like that we can co-create what it is that we want to do with our time. And I always just feel so like honored and grateful for this circle because like Claire, you've brought like folks together that I have various connections to, but like wouldn't really have the space or time to connect in a deep way. So I'm grateful that we get to, like share that experience of relationality or like whatever it is that we are currently processing, as well as, working through scores and improvising together. It just feels like such a gift and such a pleasure to be able to connect in that way. And I'm, yeah, always just so grateful. It's always been such a beautiful experience to be together.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And all like the little side projects too, like the thing that we did for the dance current.
Dance Central.
Yes, so that was really beautiful. Like all the offshoots of like our time together too. It's really beautiful and I really feel how individual we are, like how different, how we each come to the circle from a different perspective, and I feel like that's super valuable.
Thank you. I feel like it's like a microcosm of what I've always had an issue with calling the dance community, because I've always felt like that over categorizes and over boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why it's a term and it can be absolutely celebrated, but I also feel like I've felt boxed in by that term quite often because I felt a little bit of anxiety around what that means to the person who's using that term. Like, and a bit like I won't be able to deliver inside of that terminology I won't have the freedom I need in order to create, that. So I think one of the things in this that I felt like I'm finding is it's really hard for me not to leave with an agenda. Like it's really easy for me to come in without one, but to leave without one is something I'm still working on. And I love that experience of letting that go, like, and feeling like what just happened had to happen. Like that was, and I don't have to do anything more about it. I don't have to, if something keeps resurfacing, then it's a sign that it's something I could find out more about or invest in. But I'm really loving that too. So I want to thank all of you for that. Simran, would you like to pick up?
Yes, I'm also echoing what both Vanessa and Jeanette have shared. I think it's really exciting how like you meet someone and some connections just start off as like relationships. Maybe you work together once or twice, but without you knowing, relationships expand and build and get stronger, and before you know it, you're collaborating for a long time or working with someone over and over again, or working with an organization or like a different part of community. Like an example is even how I've met Vanessa was through like a application call, and before I knew it, I've worked with her, one of the most consistent people I've worked with in the city as like an interpreter and dancer in like some of her works. And I think that's something that's really been exciting about Regroup is like getting to work for certain people in certain spaces and then coming into Regroup and then being, not that I'm not eye to eye in those spaces, but being in like a different context with those same people who might be facilitating me in certain spaces, but then getting to work together beside each other in Regroup has been really interesting and like also been really exciting, I think, for like where I'm at in my career and like how I get to see myself and how I get to interact with all of you. I also like something I'm really loving about community lately, especially in this city, is how much like we get to shapeshift within community. I think like something that's been really exciting for my career is getting to practice like so many different sides of myself as an artist. If I want to be more in theater or more in acting or more in film and TV with commercial dance or more in street dance, battling and ciphering, or more in contemporary contexts. I feel like there's ways to like shapeshift and activate all those things, and sometimes they all happen like all at once, and sometimes one of them takes over for a long time. And within that shapeshifting, I think there's like another layer of shapeshifting when like we all get to encounter each other in our different roles in community and how often our roles change. And I think it's like a good practice for all of us to expand our confidence. If like in one space I'm someone's student, but then in another space maybe I'm the choreographer, I'm their boss. I think that it's an important practice to like remain and be ourselves throughout all those roles, but then just activating or enhancing different parts of ourselves when we have to be those roles. And then within Regroup, having no agenda, I think, has been something that I didn't realize I've actually been taking into my practice. And when I go attend other things in other cities, like some residencies I've done this year, I would go in with maybe a curiosity, but my most recent one I did in Montreal, I went in with no agenda. And I wanted to see like what would happen to me if I didn't impose something or bring up anything. I wanted to see what would come to me. And I think that's something I got to learn from all of you in our sessions.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I go in so many directions, but it's Virginia's turn.
Okay. I guess sometimes when I think about community too, I think about, what is the opposite of community, which would be isolation, and I think all of us go through that from time to time. And in my own case, I was very separate from the dance community for a long time due to my own choices as a result of injuries, that I just found it too hard to be part of the dance community when I lost my mobility. But then coming back to it and realizing, it was still there and kind of embracing me with open arms in many ways. It does still affect me, though, to understand how circumstances in life, whether it be health, whether it be trials that you might go through, can lead to periods of isolation. But that I've had to accept that we're never far from community, and I think about, Jeanette, how you're drawing in the Dance Central, like I think about concentric circles. And sometimes, we're far out on that periphery, but we've never actually left the circle. And so actually with this group, I feel like I've kind of come from a bit closer in from the periphery towards a sort of center for myself, where I feel like I am a more functioning part of the community again, and I'm finding my place in it again, although it can be filled with self-doubt at times, and the trials and the struggles do continue and can threaten to isolate me, let us say, but I feel the power to push back. And then sometimes when I don't have the power, this group has been there to kind of hold me in that circle. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming at when I'm just reflecting on community, our little community, and then as it expands out into the greater dance community that we're discussing now.
Yeah, and I feel like my reason for reaching out to you as a group is also because of I want to be careful with the word here, because it's not that you have access to a different community. It's my sense that you have a strong sense of community and way of building community and interest in community in your own ways, so that there's a sense of being open and curious and willing to expand in practice and as people, and just an openness to explore and to be honest about whether or not it's working for you, or what you need for something to work, those kinds of things. That's what I felt. But of course, I was kind of somewhat projecting all of that onto you in certain ways. I feel like I've met you all in some capacity through movement and through dance. And that's becoming more and more important for me, that there's this sense of honoring the ways in which we connect through movement and through our bodies, and respecting that
and giving space for that to continue to grow and expand. So all of the things you were saying about the multifacetedness of each of us and our personalities, it's giving room for those different tonalities, if you like, or qualities that we bring to things, and shifting through those, and allowing realizations to come to us through different parts of ourselves, and bringing that to the group. I wonder, though, if we could talk maybe a little bit about what space have we created for dance in our lives now, just in a more general way, because I do feel like we're all going through phases and chapters of how dance fits into and how we integrate it into our lives. And where are we at now? Is it all consuming? Is it is it literally our lives right now? Or is it where's our space for dance? Does any of that appeal? Does anybody just want to pick up on something of that and just run with it?
I feel like it's hard to know where dance begins and where it ends. Because, for
Yeah.
myself, it is all consuming in a way, even with the administrative tasks and the bookkeeping and the planning and the granting and all of the things. It all comes back to the dance, even though sometimes it's not just about the form or, developing artistic work, but it always is centered, around the possibility of performance or creating or sharing or being in relation to others. So yeah, it's hard, but I feel like it's really hard to define what's the dance and what isn't the dance, and also in turn the lifestyle. It's hard to know when you're working and when you're not working, if that's even possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming from you right now, who's kind of touring the world, you and Vanessa have been off on a tear and a tour around the world just very recently. And so I'm about to go, and we're all working on different things. But so it is all consuming, isn't it? Because literally you're kind of waking up somewhere else. You have to be
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you want to pick up on that, Vanessa?
Yeah, I echo what Jeanette just said pretty much. It's just the boundaries are really blurry between, I think it also kind of stems from imagination. It's my imagination is also consumed with it, or with making on some level. So, and imagination is constant. So I think there isn't clear boundaries. Even parenting is kind of intersecting with it, in the sense that my schedule for work is also my schedule for life, in terms of balancing parenting and making. And are they kind of also the same thing? There's things that happen while I'm with my child that then also inform what I make and how I make it, and the ethics of how I frame things. So yeah, it's just blurry. I don't think I hope for having clear boundaries in terms of life balance and work balance, but when you love what you do, it all kind of weaves together in a way that is somewhat indistinguishable most of the time for me.
Yeah, and I suppose it's it needs outlets, right? For the outlets are what give it structure. You're going to a performance, you have this, you have this tour, you have this creation period, you have these hours when this is what you do. So that provides you with, otherwise it's all just happening all at the same time.
And coordinating people is a lot of what I do, in terms of whether it's in art making or life. It's organizing how and people are going to come into a space, or when people can come to a space and when they leave the space, and how we're all kind of doing this dance of scheduling is a huge part of what we do. And I also love that kind of dance of it, and having to be porous with that and not hold on too tightly, and learning to create space for many iterations of things to be possible.
And I'm also thinking of reverse engineering quite a bit when I'm thinking about producing for others, and even for my own work, and kind of almost working backwards to which is a really interesting process. So I constantly feel like I'm moving forward, and then having to move backwards each kind of every day to work out whether or not that's feasible, possible, whether it's interesting, whether it's practical or pragmatic, or whether it's got, it's this element of kind of creativity and beyond knowing how to actually make it happen. So I'm kind of in that. I'm always juggling those things. Virginia, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I'll just add that for me right now, it's kind of a shift from facilitating the dance process for others to kind of coming back into my own body. I think that I carry that practice of, working with my own body all the time. But it feels like when I'm really focused on generating movement from others, then I'm not as focused on what I need, what my body needs. And so I feel like right now is a time where I'm just kind of like letting that go for a bit of facilitation and trying to generate and educate in terms of physical literacy to go back to my own embodiment and my own kind of investigation of what the next story is. And sometimes, honestly, it feels like a bit of a battle because I feel like dance is my weapon against some of the physical ailments. So I feel like I'm getting my arsenal ready and I'm getting out there and I'm doing the kind of the pushback, I guess, is the way it feels from the inside. But on the other hand, it does feel amazing because I am able to do many, many things which I never ever thought would be possible. So for me, dance is kind of a miracle that's unfolding. It spared me from many things in my early life, that it brought me through tough situations I was in as a child, as a teenager. It was that place I could go to away from home that had relationships and people that cared about me. And now it's kind of like my opportunity to care for myself at this moment and come back in and say, okay, what does this dancing body need? And just take a break from what I think maybe my students need or this group needs or the next project needs. So yeah, I'm in a kind of a tender place. It's a good place though.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is, I don't know when it begins and when it ends either. I feel like it's something that's always consumed my life and now is consuming it in so many ways of almost like everywhere I go, everything I do, there's like some sort of thought of dance making or movement or and even like a lot of my other practices, it kind of like sneaks in even if I don't bring it into the room with me. Even when I think about my writing practice, so much of it now has been thinking about other ways to write about dance or to write about artists or choreographers and ways that we can accompany them. Thinking about my acting practice too, so much of it is method acting, and so much of that to me feels like relearning like the most basic things about my body that sometimes can be like overcomplicated by dance. And now through like relaxation, having to find a natural state of moving around space sometimes. In my XR technology practice, I find that's when dance comes in the most, and I feel like the dance brings out the human in the technology and has like taught me that as far as like these devices advance, they would still be like nothing without us, and it needs us and it needs our flaws to make some of these images interesting and to make some of these images mean something different. And then I think about the people I've met throughout dance in my entire life, from like when I started at 3 years old in a ballet academy till now. And like all the different parts of dance I've gotten to see, being fully immersed in street dance and then fully immersed in classical dance, and all the different lives that have been lived around me, also in relationship to my life, and how exciting and wild all of those lives have been, and how dance has played such a big role in how wild those lives have been, and how dance like takes us places we can't even imagine and like takes us to parts of the world we wouldn't go otherwise. I used to have a dance teacher when I was younger. When I was a teenager, one of my teachers, some of our rehearsals would go hours past our end time and we'd be so tired. And if anybody was to like complain, I'd have a dance teacher who would say, you should be grateful because you have somewhere to be and something to do. And that's not the case for a lot of people growing up, especially like where I grew up. I grew up in Calgary and I grew up in an area that was more low income. And it's true, For where I grew up in like that pocket of the community, there wasn't like a lot to do and a lot of places to be. And so being in dance my whole life really took me out of so much trouble and saved me from a lot of trouble. So I think in that way, dance has like remained one of the things in my life that's been the most consistent and constant and ever growing and transforming thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think there's one of the things I thought we could end on maybe is kind of what we're finding anew maybe, or what we're freshly like working with at the moment, and maybe something that is really stable, something stable and something new, maybe not, maybe we don't have anything that's stable. But I've been thinking about this a lot with, just to go to what Virginia was saying around coming back to the body. I'm on that journey. I'm trying to integrate my newfound passion for tap dance into my contemporary dance vocabulary, whatever that is. I'm also letting all of it go and letting something new come up from all of that, and that definitely feels like that's new, but at the same time I don't have to abandon everything I already know. I'm bringing that with me, but I don't want to bring all of it with me. I want to see how they dialogue. I want to see what comes up as I start to kind of honor what I already have in here, what I'm already working with, and what it can do with this new influence. This is also just another analogy of what I feel Regroup is, because you're all influencing me in your ways in terms of the conversations we have and the times we spend together. So I wonder if there's something around that, and it could just be what you're focusing on right now, if you think you are. But I just think it might be a nice way of kind of rounding this off, and just, so I don't have the last word, honoring the fact that this is a year that we've since Regroup. Like we started last July. So when this goes out, it's going to be a year. So it's quite interesting, I think. Yeah. Anyway, just happy birthday. Okay. So would anybody like to pick up on that? What you working on? What you focusing on? What's new?
I'll just say something a little brief, because it is a bit new for me, but I'm focused on endurance right now. And I'm fascinated by endurance training and endurance runners and ultra runners. And I found that it's very important for me to have a toughness in what's coming down the pipe for me. And also I'm really curious as to how much I can endure and how far I can go. And it's been a fascinating journey so far.
Beautiful. Thank you. Vanessa?
I think continuing interrogating intimacy between the body and the environment, and that's just like a continuing in my practice of that. And then I think something that I feel is like shifted in the overall landscape, and figuring out how to navigate that now, especially kind of at the scale that I'm working at and with how many people I get to engage annually, is just navigating the level of scarcity in terms of resources, and still making sure that I can follow through on all the commitments I've made to everybody. And figuring out navigating that constantly. That feels like a constant dance right now. That feels different than even, I would say, 2 years ago. And it's continuing to change. It continues to constantly shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can speak next. What Simran shared is still like resonating with me, to say that like dance is the constant and the circle of dance, and dance has always been a place for me to process and to like come to terms with my own life and my own reality, I guess. But the creative process itself is always ebbing and flowing and changing, and that is always, that can be like challenging and hard and uncomfortable, but that's also like how I receive healing, I guess, is through committing to that space of dance. And I mean, dance hasn't always come easy for me. So that commitment to it too is like, it's just a space for healing, I would say. And like my interests are always in relationality and collaboration and community. And I think that's also part of the healing that I receive from, this ongoing journey with dance, and even this circle here today. So that's what I'll say, all my relations.
I think I'm really interested in the reintegrating. I know I kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'm interested in, like, as humans, as people, like, where we all share this thing and we all share this community, and just thinking about how complicated community can be and how much it changes in all the little communities within a community. I'm always thinking about the way, like, we process things, and sometimes when we process things, depending on the scale of what we've gone through, like, sometimes we have to leave community, and it can feel like there's people who just disappear, or they're gone, or like they've been, like, swallowed by a star or something, but they're still living their life and still doing what they have to do. They're just dancing in different ways or somewhere else. And I've been really thinking a lot about how, like, what it's like to return and what it's like to come back, and that as long as someone's patiently waiting for us, that we can return and we can come back. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. Maybe it just really has to be one. And by the time we come back, that it doesn't really matter anymore why we left or what it was that made us leave, but what matters now is that we're back. And I think I want to keep focusing on, like, the return and how we can reintegrate people and how we can hold space for return, and that maybe return isn't such a big deal. It's just a way that we can, like, slip back in and find our new self in this community that's always changing. I guess what I'm working on more formally is I'm premiering a work on July 5th at the Indian Summer Festival, collaboration with myself and Justine A. Chambers. And something, like, we've been uncovering together is the functions within whacking and the memories and past dances that emerge through whacking and memories that emerge through whacking and the archives within it, which I think is, like, something that it's like we have these things that we're always interested in, but then when we finally get, like, a space or, like, resources to really activate those interests, it's quite amazing what can happen. So also thinking about the scarcity of resources, as Vanessa was saying, and how to maybe expand them more, like, find ways that through community we can offer each other resources, and we're not always relying on systems that maybe aren't built for us, or, like, systems that are ever changing.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think, Vanessa, would you like to speak to that?
I think first of all, thank you, Simran. That's so beautiful, everything you just said. And also, thank you, Jeanette. But yeah, no, I think I agree. It's like, I feel like working within collaborative processes has made it possible to work within scarcity of resources right now. And yeah, and this kind of, like, leads me back to the dance center. Like, within that scarcity, I've been able to bring so many people on board to work on projects, like probably over 20 people on board on projects in the last year, because I've found alternate ways to navigate through that scarcity with their support, which then has rippled out with 20 other collaborative artists. So I feel like in that sense, community is so important, and also looking at ways also outside of traditional formats, or to operate and to share, really to share. Like, honestly, that's what it is. It's about sharing knowledge and creating opportunities for knowledge exchange that has facilitated that.
That's great. And I think this is a really good place to bring this to a close for us, because I just wanted to say that the reason why Regroup exists also is it was part of my artist residency with the Dance Center. But exactly what Vanessa was saying, it's a shared practice. It's an opportunity for the Dance Center to support more than one artist. You know, so there is something really special about us providing the Dance Center with these opportunities, artist-led opportunities that are about ways in which we are sharing practice and then sharing our knowledge collectively and expanding out the work that the Dance Center does through all of our voices to reach more people. And I think that's something we can definitely help the Dance Center achieve. And this is how we do it. Yeah, just showing my age now, sorry. And now we go for a silent disco. So I should just mute myself. We'll see you all later.
Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, as this will help other listeners find us and help us to grow our dance audience. We'll be back next month. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at The Dance Centre, Twitter at Dance Centre, and Instagram at The Dance Centre BC. And if you'd like to support our work, please consider making a donation. Just go to our website at thedancecentre.ca, where you'll find extensive information about our upcoming programs and events. The music for the Dance Centre podcast was composed by James B. Maxwell. Always a pleasure to connect with you through dance. Until next time.